Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and it is a pleasure to welcome you to Founders Day at Albertus Magnus College. This is a very wonderful moment when we are grateful for those who founded the college back in 1925. Next year will, of course, be the celebration of the college's 90th anniversary. I am very, very pleased to welcome all of you, and especially this morning to welcome Sister Toma Swanson back to the campus to talk with us a bit about preaching through the visual arts. We celebrate preaching today, especially because it is a very Dominican day here at Albertus Magnus College. To introduce Sister Toma Swanson, for her talk this morning, it is truly a pleasure to ask Sister Ann Kilbride to come forward and make that introduction of Sister Toma, one of her sisters.
Thank you. I don't know I'm making music with this microphone. Dominicans preaching through the arts. Today we are going to feature two forms of art, the visual arts and music. We are fortunate to have with us two Dominican Sisters of Peace, Sister Toma Swanson, who some of you know, and Sister Amy McFrederick, who will help us explore the power of the arts to transform our lives and enable us to be preachers. Surrounding us in the atrium this morning are some prints of the work of the Dominican Fra Angelico. Many of Fra Angelico's works are on the walls of San Marco in Florence, Italy. The Dominicans envisioned San Marco as a center of Dominican life and spirituality, where the contemplative life would be nourished by word and beauty, giving the friars the wisdom and inspiration for their common mission of preaching, to bring the good news of the gospel to others. Our first presentation this morning will be given by Sister Toma, who is known to many of us here at Albertus, and many of her works surround us, as you will see as the day goes by. The title of Sister Toma's presentation is Artists, Art, and Preaching. Following Sister Toma's presentation, we will have 4 responders from the art and art therapy departments. A little bit about Sister Toma. She earned her BA degree at Cardinal Stritch University, her MA in painting from the University of Notre Dame, and her MFA in painting and printmaking from the Pratt Institute in New York. Sister Toma's career as an artist has been rich and varied. She taught art on the secondary level at Watterson High School in Columbus and St. Mary's High School in New Haven. During this time, she was also an adjunct professor in art education at Ohio Dominican University. From 1969 to 1986, Sister Toma founded and chaired the art department at Albertus, so we have a deep debt of gratitude to her. At Albertus, Toma developed an art major that gave students the choice of a concentration in studio art, art history, or art therapy with the psychology department. In 1979, Sister Toma was awarded a sabbatical by the college to paint in Peru, which inspired her next career, which began in 1986 in Peru. Profoundly inspired by the beauty of Peru, but also its pervasive poverty, Toma worked with poor women to develop saleable and artistic handicrafts. These handicrafts have been sold worldwide. While assisting the woman, Toma continued to paint, teach classes, and do murals and other commissions. These commissions included stained glass windows and a wood crucifix for the House of Studies of the Dominican Order in Peru, murals, paintings, and Stations of the Cross in Chimbote and other places in Peru, and workshops in ceramic sculpture, printmaking, and watercolor painting. Upon returning to Columbus in 1997, Toma established her own studio. Her works since then have included landscape painting and stained glass designs for churches and chapels in Cincinnati, Columbus, Florida, and Lima, Peru, as well as here at our own chapel at Albertus. Since returning to the United States, Toma has also exhibited her art widely in Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, West Virginia, and Peru. She also has received numerous awards for her contributions. Among these are the Mother Teresa Award from the St. Bernadette Institute of Sacred Art in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the Fray Angelico Award from the Dominican Institute for the Arts, and the Liturgical and Sacred Art Award from the Springfield, Illinois Art Association. These accomplishments certainly represent a rich and varied art career, grounded in Toma's Dominican life as a Dominican Sister of Peace, our founding congregation. So let us warmly welcome Sister Toma back to Albertus.
I thought she was talking about someone else. I couldn't believe that, but thank you, Anne. That was a beautiful, amazing introduction. I thought you can save that from my, my obituary. I've spent my life really trying to put together my call to be an artist with my call to be a religious. On the cover of my first communion book. I don't know, they probably don't have them anymore, but we used to get these little celluloid books with pictures on them. And on my book was the Blessed Mother emerging from a bower of flowers. And this was a typical art of my youth, of my childhood. And I really didn't care for it too much, but that's the way it was, so I accepted it. I learned very early to reject it because I had some good influences. As a child, I had no art lessons, but my family was a family of makers. My grandmother made gorgeous cakes and quilts and beautiful things. My mother sewed her own clothes and wore spectacular hats that really caused quite a commotion in church. And my uncle, her brothers, were both not artists, but one was an engineer, a woodworker, maker of things, and the other an artist, an architect, a watercolor painter. So I had good influence, and I have to really thank my mother because she did not object very strongly at all to my projects, which began I can't remember not making something. I had a little place in the dining room, a little table where I could work, and she didn't object to my flour pastes that I dripped all over the kitchen and the dining room, because she was pretty messy herself. She had all her sewing all over. So we were, I was comfortable and I was encouraged. My uncle, who just started out as an architect, but also was a painter, always kept me supplied with paint or crayons and chalk, and looked at my work. Never taught me anything, but he always encouraged me and supported me. So that's really, I think that's the kind of childhood that produces artists. And I was very fortunate to grow up in a family like that. I was about 12 when I began to paint outdoors as my uncle did. He became an architect because someone told him he better know how to make a living, and that was better than painting pictures. But he still painted, and I began to paint outdoors, and I continue to this day to paint outdoors. My first experience really in having a place to paint was my uncle's farm. This was the other side of the family, my father's family. Our family farm is in western New York, beautiful Genesee Valley. And I loved the slate cliffs of the streams. I loved the hills, the blue hills. And I loved the animals. I can remember learning to paint or to draw the curve of a horse's back. And I filled my sketchbook with horses, That was temporary, but, it went on. So this watercolor does not represent what I did when I was 12 years old, but it's one I painted outdoors in Columbus, but Columbus is not a very pictorial place. It has lots of creeks, so I've kind of explored the creeks. No mountains, no cliffs, but you know, you have to use what you have. So anyway, I was in college before I had any formal art classes. Most of the teachers I encountered had not really found their own voices as artists. It took a long time for me to get past the rather narrow instruction that I received, but I persevered, and even though I was exposed to all the various isms of the time, you can see there surrealism, impressionism, post-impressionism, abstract expressionism. I mean, they're all there. And they were interesting, but I could not adopt one. Now, you know, people sometimes have said to me, well, what's your style? You know, like I could put a name on it. I don't have a style that has a name, you know. I just do it. And I'm fortunate that I had enough courage to do that. So when I finally got to graduate school, I was confronted with another popular theory. Art, to be pure art, could have no visible reference to or relation to the real world. Painting should not tell stories or recall real things. To call a painting literary was to condemn it. I don't know whether you've ever heard that, but this was very prevalent at the time, and abstract expressionism was the big thing when I was in graduate school in New York. This was a very popular theory during the middle of the century, probably the 50s, 60s. There were other isms too, but I won't get into that. That wasn't where I was. But what I did learn was that in order to get a good grade, I had to do something that, you know, represented what I was being taught. So I did try abstract expressionism, but I couldn't really get into it because I needed to have a message in my painting. I couldn't just paint colors and shapes and forms with no reason behind it. Now, that's not to condemn abstract art, because symbolism in abstract art, yes, that works for me, but not just splashing around and, you know, abstract expressionism was the painting really didn't matter much. It was the record of the battle, so to speak. Let's see if I've got one here. No, I don't, but anyway, wait a minute on that. Put it back for a minute. Okay, so those who reject representation are caught in a trap. There is meaning in what they do. The meaning is that it doesn't mean anything, that somehow there is nothing to say. By rejecting representation, one does not get to the artwork as such. One only shifts the question to the change in meaning that occurs. Do you understand what I mean? So if you paint without any point, without any, well, how are you going to know when you're finished? You know, this theory put a deep chill on my use of representation. I didn't deny the validity of abstract art because I know that it can be symbolic and symbols carry meaning, and that was okay. That was good. I could do that, but I couldn't paint without having something behind it, some reason. The artist Ben Shahn, in his book, The Shape of Content, a 1957 book, said this: I had long carried in my mind that famous critical credo, which runs as follows: the representative element in a work of art may or may not be harmful, but it is always irrelevant. For to appreciate a work of art, we must bring with us nothing from life, no knowledge of its affairs, ideas, no familiarity with its emotions. That's a pretty good summary of what the theory. But I'm happy to report that Ben Shahn himself rejected that, and he made powerful paintings that presented in compelling and understandable forms his ideas and criticism of contemporary society, especially issues of justice. And if you look at the slide right there, you can see he doesn't say very much. He doesn't belabor the idea, but the hands grasping, the black hand grasping the white hand, you cannot stand and not do something. In other words, it's a kind of sideways slam. I think he was a very powerful artist. Here's another painting of his. This is The Passion of Sacco and Vanzetti. You probably never heard of Sacco and Vanzetti, except maybe some artists. I see somebody nodding there, that's great. Well, this was a big scandal in the 1920s. These two men were anarchists, and they believed in destroying things, but they didn't really murder the person that they were accused of murdering in a robbery. And their trial was a sham. And because the trial was a sham, it was condemned, and people fought about it, and it became an issue of justice for a long time. And it wasn't really until, I think, 1978 that the governor of Massachusetts finally declared them innocent. You can believe it. I may be wrong on that date, but it was in the 70s or 80s that he finally got around to admitting that the trial had been a sham and that the two men were innocent. This is another of Shahn's paintings. But I soon discovered that this whole cafeteria approach to painting still had not given me my own language. How could I put together what I knew of art history and philosophy with what I knew experientially as I struggled to be both an artist and a Dominican religious? Now I began to wonder if perhaps my true art might be the watercolors that this is abstract expressionism. We can bash through that. Okay, here we are. The watercolors that I'd been making for so long. I continued to paint outdoors because I loved the magic quality of light, which changes a landscape with unexpected drama. I painted for my personal satisfaction, which allowed me to be totally unself-conscious and indifferent to adopting a particular style. I was expressing the simple beauty of what I was seeing, unconcerned that the paintings did not imitate what I saw. They were more like songs or poems, variations on a theme of God's creation. Gradually, I discovered that making these paintings was becoming important to me as a way of integrating my life and paying personal homage to the Creator. Painting became my way of communing with God, of applauding the beauty of creation. And finally, I realized that these paintings were saying something, that I was saying something through them, and that their voices might indeed be a kind of preaching. John Paul II he himself was an artist. You remember, he was a playwright and an actor. And he said, "No one can sense more deeply than you artists, ingenious creators of beauty that you are, something of the pathos with which God at the dawn of creation looked upon the work of his hands. That feeling has sparkled so often in your eyes when captivated by the hidden power of sounds and words, colors and shapes. You have admired the work of your inspiration. You have sensed in it some echo of the mystery of creation with which God, the creator of all things, has wished in some mysterious way to share with you. I think that's a beautiful quote and a beautiful insight which John Paul had. I continued to teach, to paint, and exhibit right here at Albertus. And finally, I got that wonderful opportunity to go to Peru to paint. I discovered that there were plenty of artists in Peru. Well, I knew that as soon as I went to the museums, because the museums are full of the art of the past in Peru. They're really wonderful, wonderful things. And so I thought about it, and I thought, well, the genes must still be there someplace, you know. So we were working with in a very poor barrio with very poor women, but I gathered them together and asked them if they would like to learn to do something that might possibly bring them some income. Well, that, of course, was very attractive to them because they needed that. And so we began making these little tapestries, which we called Tapacitos de Vivencia, little tapestries of life. And they portrayed both the life that the women lived at the time and the Bible and stories from the Bible. So what you see here is a nativity that took place in Peru. I mean, they've transplanted the nativity to Peru. A talented natural artist. These were natural artists. They were untrained. They had not been to art school, which sometimes spoils an artist. They were challenged to make art out of their own cultural belief system. They didn't work to get grants or join the stable, quote unquote, of a popular gallery or make the cover of Art News. They didn't wait until they could afford expensive art materials. They used whatever trash they could find, from mud, literally mud, to all kinds of plant fibers, even cans, bottle caps, cardboard boxes, and other trash. Yet they dreamed of having artist colors, of having paints, you know. So these artists, I was happy to work with them. Our project allowed these Peruvian artists to quietly preach from their hearts. This is a banner which depicts, there's a second one which I'm not showing. It's the Annunciation and the beginning of the Joyful Mysteries of the Rosary, up to where Joseph takes Mary into his house here at the end. And the two women that you see there, a mother and daughter, are the ones who embroidered that banner. That is in a church in Florida, I hope. I hope it's still there, in Port Richey, Florida. The biblical events and daily life situations which they portray in their tapestries became for them a valid and effective way of making true and meaningful art that delighted others and preached effectively. Finally, I saw how important it was that we realize that God has given us the arts for important reasons. Through the arts, we express externally our humanity, our thoughts and feelings. This is a small tapestry of the Santa River and all the fun that happens around the Santa River. It's a big river that flows down from the mountains and irrigates a large territory in Peru. But it's also a place of play, as you can see. So this is the kind of thing that inspired them to actually put down. So I think it's a great example of the kind of art that they were making. Through the arts, we express externally our humanity, our thoughts and feelings. Not only does this support our mental and physical health, it also gives us a small experience of the unique joy and delight that our Creator has in his continuing grand work. You know, God is still creating. It's not over. It's not over. Creation still continues. We ourselves also experience great delight in the process of creating. Jacques Maritain, in his book, Art and Scholasticism, confirms this when he writes, "There is a despotic and all-absorbing power of art, as also its astonishing power of soothing. It frees from every human care. It establishes the art or artisan in a world apart, cloistered, defined, and absolute, where she devotes all her strength and intelligence to the service of the thing she is making. This is true of every art. The ennui of living and willing ceases on the threshold of every studio or workshop." And I can testify to that. This is cutting sugar cane. And here is the artist who made that tapecito. This is Eva Robles. And you can see how concentrated she is on her work of drawing on the cloth to make the tapestry. So you may kind of say, well, this is great, but what about me? What about those of us who don't have this big artistic gene? What are we supposed to do? And John Paul has a good answer. Not all are called to be artists in the specific sense of the term, yet all are entrusted with the task of crafting their own life. In a certain sense, they are to make of it a work of art, a masterpiece. So this was our first exhibit, which was the tapecitos were stapled on the plywood wall of the downtown post office in Chimbote. And it did attract a lot of people who inspected and really looked at things closely, because they're all, you know, most Peruvians are artists in one way or another, and so they were very interested. And I love this picture. I don't know who the woman was, but I think it's really wonderful. So we realized that, well, here's another example of working and the absorption. They're working on their tapecitos in outdoors. We mostly were outdoors. And now we come to our own artist. We Dominicans are fortunate to have an example to learn from, a great act to follow. Our own brother, Fra Angelico Giovanni da Fiesoli. It has taken a long time for him to be publicly recognized as a homilist as well as a painter and saint. He was born around 1400, but it wasn't until 1982 that Pope John Paul gave permission for a liturgical cultus in honor of Fra Angelico. Imagine that. So nobody's rushing to canonize artists, I'll tell you that. Fra Angelico was very faithful to his Dominican profession, and he was a preacher in color and in form. The word of God can be proclaimed from pulpits and professors' chairs, by the press, and Fra Angelico is to be found in the limited circle of those who profess the word of God, who preach the word of God pictorially. From the theological point of view, there do not exist qualitative differences between the different methods of proposing the word of God, preaching the word of God. So you can't look down your nose at art as a way of preaching. The essential conditions for an authentic evangelization are two: the knowledge of the revealed truth, which is the fruit of daily contemplation, and a clear and pleasing exposition of Christian doctrine. So doesn't take much. Art demands tranquility, said Fra Angelico, and to paint the things of Christ, the artist must live with Christ. This is the Last Judgment, and it's hard to see because there's so much crowded there. On the left side, as you look, is paradise, and you can see a circle of angels dancing with Dominicans there. I'm not sure you can make it out, but it's a wonderful part of that painting. And then, of course, in the center top, you see at the heavenly choirs and God enthroned, Christ enthroned above. Below, the souls are emerging from their tombs. See, they're coming out. The tombs are those little square things, and they're emerging. And on the right, we have hell. And it's pretty good if you can see it. I don't know. It's very detailed and shows some very unhappy souls emerging from who have been condemned to hell. We realize that artists are gifts from God for the community, as the community is a gift for the artist. Here we see Dominic embracing the crucifix. And this is a beautiful painting. The image I was able to get is not very good. Here's a close-up of the face of Christ in that painting, which I do think is very beautiful. And here, the resurrection. And actually, this is the transfiguration, but this image is often used for a resurrection image. That, if you remember, and you can see the prophets at the top, and down below the apostles waiting, who were with Christ at the time of the transfiguration. So going back to the idea of the artist as gift to the community. This sharing with the community may become a true way of preaching. As individual artists with differing talents, we actually can be called to evangelize the community. The truth that artists perceive is made visible, hearable, immediate, and understandable to the community. And of course, that would include the other arts, not just painting. It would include drama, it would include music, certainly, all the ways that we express. The gift of expression is really what we're talking about, expressing how we feel, how we understand something. The artist serves the community by giving the community more than enough. And here's Dominic, or here's Fra Angelico giving us more than enough Dominican saints. And this is an interesting painting because somebody has written the names on the figures. You can't, I'm sure you can't see, you might see a little smudge, but I tried to read those names, but I don't know what language they're written in. I couldn't make out any of them because I probably would need to have the original painting. But I think more than enough is kind of what God is generous to us in a big, lavish way. He's not skimpy and selfish or holding things back. When he gives us things, he gives us lots of things. And the artist also has that power to give generously to the community because you're giving joy and enjoyment, you're giving pleasure. Just think of all the ways that you enjoy art. Think of the 4th of July, you know. Think of decorating the Christmas tree. Think of all the ways in which art makes your life more interesting, more pleasurable, more exciting. Think of the movies that are good. Not all of them, but some of them certainly do that. So the artist brings gifts of delight and beauty to the community. Have you been to Millennium Park in Chicago? I think that's a wonderful example of more than enough. Well, you can spend a day there. It's so interesting and beautiful. And we can say also that the community actually evangelizes the artist. The artist learns from the community, and the community learns from the artist when they come together through participation in artistic activities. So the community, okay, we're on to the next person here. Lest you think that artists have all the fun, there is a dark side to being an artist. Fritz Eichenberg, a great artist, printmaker, and I would remind you, maybe you don't know this, but Fritz taught for a year here at Albertus, and he was a wonderful teacher of printmaking. Okay, telling me to hurry up. Okay, so I will show you some of his paintings, and which are really very fine examples of preaching. Here we have a painting called The Bread Line, and you can see Christ in the bread line, reminding us that the poor are Christ in a way that we can't understand except spiritually. And here is the Last Supper, Christ sharing a meal with the poor, the damaged. These are all Fritz Eichenberg. I call him a Quaker saint. He was a Quaker, and he really illustrated the Catholic worker at the request of Dorothy Day. And he said, well, I'm paying my dues. In other words, he realized that his gift was for more than himself. He was paying his dues by making the drawings or the carvings that were in the Catholic worker. Here is the Book of Jonah. You can see poor Jonah over here. And here, my favorite, the Pietà. And actually, he gave this to me as a gift. This, I have a print of this, a small print. It's not very large, but it is so beautiful. So it is the incarnation, the Word made flesh, that puts materials of the world at our service and allows them to carry the burden of meaning that we give them. Our Pope Francis has latched right onto this. And this is from The Joy of the Gospel, which I hope all of you are reading because it's a marvelous, marvelous work. Proclaiming Christ means showing that to believe in and follow him is not only something right and true, but something beautiful, capable of filling life with new splendor and profound joy, even in the midst of difficulties. Every expression of true beauty can be acknowledged as a path leading to an encounter with the Lord. And then he goes on, I'm not going to read all of it, but this last part I really have to read. We must be bold enough to discover new signs and new symbols, new flesh to embody and communicate the word, and different forms of beauty which are valued in different cultural settings, including those unconventional modes of beauty which may mean little to the evangelizers, yet prove particularly attractive to others. So when I see a church built in the style of the 12th century today, I'm not very happy because I think that we need to move on from that. We need to use the materials, the intelligence, our own way of expression. And people have to be open to that. They have to realize that artists today have the same right to express beauty as did the artists of the 12th century. These are some paintings of mine, which I just threw in at the end here. This one is lost. If anyone knows where it is, I'd be really nice. Well, I think it's someplace in this area. And I don't know what happened to it. But if anyone has seen it, it's not that big, of course. It's much smaller than that. But here is the resurrection scene. This is Mary Magdalene being torn between her desire to stay with Christ and his instruction, go and tell my brethren. She is the first preacher, the one who's commissioned. A woman is the commissioned first preacher. So I think this is a really important idea. And Sifra and Pua, they were the midwives of the women in Egypt when they were remember when they were told to kill all the baby boys because they didn't want to. They were afraid that I have 1 minute left. Okay. So Sifra and Pua, I think they have a place in the art. And this is the bent over woman. Remember, she was bent over for 18 years, and finally she saw Jesus at the synagogue, and she knew he could cure her, which he did, and she is there in the last picture, right, cured of her disease. This is a painting I did from Iraq. I went to Iraq in 2002 before the war. Our purpose was a group of Dominicans. The purpose was to witness to the effects of the sanctions that we had imposed on Iraq. This is called The Price of Oil, and the price of oil was the lives of the children who were dying of intestinal diseases and various things that were caused by the war, by the bombings and so forth, and by our need for oil. And this, of course, is also the same, and you can read that. May the people who live between the two rivers of fire, and at that time the rivers of fire were Saddam Hussein on one side and us on the other, have peace at last, and we're still praying for that. So thank you very much, and
Toma, we are most grateful to you for this wonderful talk, life story in a way, of all the things that have influenced you, have certainly influenced your art, and then been able to preach to all of us in the process. That's a great gift. And what I walk away with is the beauty, the spirituality, and the justice from your artwork that you've been able to share with other people over these years. Today, we are pleased to have 4 responders to Sister Toma's presentation, 2 professors and 2 students from our art and art therapy programs at Albertus. I'm going to introduce all 4 responders, and they will then each give their response. So if you would all come up so people can know who you are. Our first responder is Abby Miller, who is an associate professor at Albertus and director of the Graduate Art Therapy Program. Abby has taught nationwide the processes of transformational art psychotherapy for over 33 years. In addition to her work at Albertus, Abby maintains a private practice and is an exhibiting artist. Among her published works and presentations at art workshops is her journal article, Inspired by El Duende, One Canvas Process Painting in Art Therapy Supervision. Our next responder is Annalise, who graduated from Albertus in May of 2014 with a major in psychology and art therapy. Her career goal is working in a memory care facility doing art therapy, or working in a school doing art therapy with children who have special needs. Annalise's own special interests are creating art, working and caring for others, and reading and writing in order to understand the world better and thus influence her art and influence her role of trying to help other people. Jerome Nevins, as we call Jerry, is in his 35th year of teaching. And a little trivia, Sister Toma hired Jerry when she was here, in the Department of Visual and Performing Arts at Albertus Magnus College. He serves as co-chair of the department and has worked on many faculty committees. Before coming to Albertus, Jerry was chair of the art department at Stoneleigh Burnham School in Greenfield, Massachusetts. Jerry's undergraduate studies at Albright College in Pennsylvania focused on psychology, philosophy, religion, and art. He attended graduate school at Rochester Institute of Technology, where he earned an MFA degree in still photography. Jerry was deeply influenced by the work of photographer Minor White, with whom he spent a day in Arlington, Massachusetts. White said, "One should not only photograph things for what they are, but for what else they are." White challenged his students to see more deeply beyond the surface appearance of things and to find a deeper meaning. In his years of teaching, Jerry has endeavored to bring that same profound insight to his students. Jerry is most grateful for the privilege of being able to challenge undergraduates to find meaning in their lives through visual experiences and expression. Rebecca Weinberger is a member of the class of 2015 at Albertus. Rebecca has a major in art therapy with a concentration in art and a minor in English. Currently, Rebecca is doing work study with Professor Julie Koash, co-chair of the Visual and Performing Arts Department. Rebecca's career goal is to be an art therapist working with the autism population. So we are most grateful to all of you. And are you going to use the handheld microphone or come here? Did you decide? Come here. Okay. So Abby's going to begin with the first response.
Thank you, Sister Toma. That was really inspiring and revealing to the fact that of the 35 approved graduate art therapy programs in the country, 1/4 of those are housed in Dominican and Catholic colleges and universities. I don't think that that's a coincidence because I believe that art therapists are called to be artists and healers. And we find ways to blend those two callings in our daily practices with ourselves and our own art making and our work with our clients, whether it's individually or with groups. I tend to walk in the realm of calling art therapists and the training of art therapists as learning how to midwife spirit. This doesn't sit as well with standard psychological practices, which many of you know in psychology, the whole realm of spirituality and religion was split off and cut out. I think art therapists from the very start had the intuition, because of their own art making and the ways in which making art brings us consciously and unconsciously in deep connection with spirit. We knew that there was something powerful in the act of making art, in the act of having our art seen and witnessed, and being held in safe spaces where another voice could emerge. And so in the realm of art therapy, we look to the importance of both the art making, the process, as well as the product. When you go and visit the show that was mounted, which we called Art and Mystery, which is our art therapy students, faculty, and alumni, I think you'll see the beauty that Sister Toma was referring to. In art therapy, we refer to beauty is truth and truth is beauty. And what that means is that when you're sitting with somebody in an art therapy process, the product that comes through them, the art itself, the painting, the drawing, may not be in a standard of beauty. But if the person's true voice, their authentic self, comes through, their message, what they cannot necessarily speak in words, if that emerges and the art therapist has the skill and the intention and the heart to midwife that, then there is a joining of spirit, there is a witnessing of spirit and self and soul in presence and in a held space, and that's where transformation happens. So I'd like to leave all of you with my closing quote, which is actually the invitation to the art show, which is by Angeles Arian. And she writes, "The portal of healing and creativity always takes us into the realm of the spirit." Thank you.
Goodness. Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Annalise, and I'm so grateful to be back here today. Thank you, Sister Toma, for that wonderful talk. Since graduating in May, I guess you can say I've been reassessing myself and how I feel about art and how I've kind of gone more into the community to seek how others view it. Since graduating, I've spent some time going back to where I interned at a memory care facility in Wallingford, and also going to another memory care facility over in Plantsville. And while I've been there, I've been able to see more of what Abby just described, kind of this conversation of a spirit emerging and being able to see that in someone else's art and in my own, and also being able to connect with each other through that to create almost an unspeakable bond that I never knew could exist in art. I'd first become so fascinated with what art was saying back when I visited Italy when I was about 15, and I saw the statue of David, and I fell to tears because I had never had such emotion from an art piece before. And that was when I realized that art wasn't just, you know, me being involved in the act of painting and what looked pretty on a canvas, and people, like my grandmother, being like, "Oh, that's so beautiful," and not even knowing where the picture was from or what it meant to me, just seeing aesthetically what it looked like. So as you know, my career went on into high school and then coming here to Albertus, everything fell into place, and I'm so grateful for the art therapy program that is here, and I intend to go on to the master's program. But even having the undergrad program, just to get a little bit of a taste of what it's like to be able to create and learn about myself and about my peers, was just very encouraging in knowing that I do want to administer to others because I think art is that powerful. I guess I would connect it to, as Sister Toma said, to music, writing, reading. I know I've sat in on a few music therapy sessions now, and I've been a part of it, and it's almost just as awakening as being a part of visual arts while painting and drawing. And I've been grateful for that, especially working with those who have Alzheimer's and dementia, who are unable to verbally maybe come up with what they want to say or how they're feeling, and seeing that in art is just, it's pretty amazing, that conversation that occurs. So I'm very grateful to have been a guest here today, and I'm very glad I've been able to respond. Thank you, Sister Ann and Sister Toma, and I wish you all to have a very wonderful day. Thank you.
That was wonderful, Annalise. And Sister Toma, it's such a pleasure to see you back again. It's when you hired me all those years ago, I was 27 years old. And now I find myself a grandfather with 2 grandchildren who are 7 and 5, so time does go quickly. I wanted to pick up on Fra Angelico just for a few slides, a couple of minutes here. And that's why I put up this here. He's an incredibly important Dominican artist and saint. And Angelico, he was angelic in terms of his own spirit and his preaching and his demeanor, as well as an incredible artist. His skill was unmatched. And I teach a course called the Museum Experience. And in that course, I ask students to engage with art directly in a museum. They're not allowed to write papers based on research in books or images on the internet, but they have to physically go and engage with a piece. And they have to choose the piece and then write a 3 to 5 page paper based on their research of it. But the idea is that they engage with it spiritually, personally, and are moved by it. Just like Annalise said, Annalise's paper would have been on David, and she would have then really opened herself to the process of engaging with art. Most of us have only seen Fra Angelico's work in slides or pictures like this. And it's impossible to really know what was going on without engaging the piece directly. You have to actually go up to the piece and take time and go in very closely and look at the gold leaf, look at the detail, look at the elegance with the way he used a brush, and realize that his spirit is conveyed over these 700 years or so, very directly popping right off the canvas when you engage. And it can't be seen through a slide like this. This piece is not his most famous, but it's, I think, one of his most elegant. You see the entire altar, which was in the convent of San Domenico in Frizzole. It's not the San Marco Annunciation, but it really is quite amazing. Let's see. Just briefly in it, the angel Gabriel comes to Mary, and we always said to announce the Annunciation, to announce that she will become with child. But in fact, in this painting, it's actually happening. She's not just telling that it's in the future, but it's actually happening. The hand of God is coming down from the upper left with this beautiful ray of light. Adam and Eve this is a time-space warp as well. Adam and Eve are simultaneously being cast out of the garden. They are clothed also in skins. The figures don't have any shadows. Figures are very ethereal, very spiritual. In terms of art history too, the way Fra Angelico used his paint, the tempera paint, and gold leaf with incredible skill. As an artist, I just go up to it and say, oh my goodness, this is amazing. So Frizzole is in Tuscany, in northern Italy. Whether it was 1355 or 1400, we don't quite know. On this slide, I wanted to point out the detail in the wings of Gabriel and in the halo also, done with gold leaf, and the detail all over the garment that he's wearing. Same thing with Mary. Oh, thank you. Oh, there is? That's okay. I'll go back to the other one there. Testing. Yeah. So before he went to San Marco, he was at the convent in Frizzole, where he did these frescoes and this altarpiece that's now in Madrid. Again, as I scan a work, I don't know if you've been to a museum and you see the crowds running around. I was at the Louvre last summer with my wife, and in the room where the Mona Lisa was, there had to be 300 people. About 40 people deep, mostly Japanese tourists, and jumping up and down with their camera from a great distance to try to get a shot of the Mona Lisa. And then they'd pass on to the next gallery, and that would be their experience of the art. So that's not the way to look at art. You need to take time. You need to look closely and carefully. And you need to open yourself to the work. You need to look at the details in the piece. And when you go to a museum, there's so many pieces, so much to look at. You have to just narrow it down to a few things. And so let's see. So yes, John Paul II very much declared him a patron of Catholic artists. So Paul said, Angelico is reported to say, he who does Christ's work must stay with Christ always. The motto earned him the epithet, Blessed Angelico, because of the perfect integrity of his life and the divine beauty of the images he painted, and to a superlative extent, those of the Blessed Virgin Mary. So. And you can read this quote, but this combination of expert artist and the fact that he was a friar and a very spiritual one is very interesting to me. It's very moving and profound. He never handled a brush without fervent prayer, and he wept when he painted the crucifixion. So. I just wanted to say thank you for enlightening us all, Sister Toma, about the necessity of spirit and the arts.
What a tough act to follow. Good morning. So when I think of arts, I really get inspired from being here at Albertus. And so speaking to you on behalf of Sister Ann, Sister Toma, and Founders Day in general, I'd like to say my name is Rebecca Weinberger. I am here as an undergrad at Albertus Magnus College, as said, studying art therapy with a concentration in art and a minor in English. Sorry. I first heard about Albertus Magnus's art therapy program when I was a senior in high school. I was very interested in the attention that I was told the students received from their professors and the attempts the professors made to help their students succeed. I applied to this college on instant decision day when I was a senior in high school in 2010. Although that day was very stressful, I got in. From that, I didn't apply to any other colleges. I knew where I had to be. I knew I needed to be at Albertus. During my years here, I have not only grown and matured as a woman, but I have found myself in the school and through the arts. With diverse classes from darkroom photography, statistics, psychology, quest of God in the modern world, to literature of love, the school has given me opportunities to explore a wide range of subjects and experiences. Being here at Albertus, I've learned a few things. 1, there is no such thing as a stupid question. 2, I can always count on my professors for any misunderstandings I may have. And finally, 3, no matter where I go in life, I know I can always come back to Albertus for love and support. This college has given me the strength and power to become a better reader, writer, painter, more philosophical me. Going forth, I hope to share my knowledge in the art therapy field. I feel inspired today to finish my year as an undergrad and work my way through the master's program into the art therapy degree. Albertus Magnus College is the foundation for the life I want to live and the life I strive for, and I know it will always be my second home. When I look through the arts and I look through the departments and the gratitude I get from just expressing myself and being able to share who I really am as an individual in the arts, I give gratitude back. And I feel very blessed to be able to stand here today and say how this school has inspired me and how I feel I have grown as a person, an artist, an individual, and where I see myself going on in the future, because without this college and without Sister Toma and her art in the gallery, or Professor Nevins or anyone, I would not be who I am today. So I really do appreciate you letting me guest speak today, and it's an honor, so thank you.
I want to thank Sister Toma, Abby, Annalise, Jerry, and Rebecca. In her summary of her presentation for today, Sister Toma wrote, "Through the arts, we express our humanity, our thoughts, emotions, and feelings. We appreciate the unique joy that the Creator has in his continuing grand work of creation, and we ourselves experience this great delight in the process of creating our art. As individual artists with differing talents, we make visible, hearable, immediate, and understandable to the community the truths we perceive." And that's what we heard this morning. Certainly today, our presenters have heard and experienced this call to bring veritas, truth, through their arts, in our mission at Albertus, to others through the contemplative act of being an artist. So thank you all once again. We're now going to proceed to the campus center and gather in the Being Community Room. Some of the students will be around to show you the way. I think you'll probably get the picture when you get outside anyhow where to go, where we will have the candlelight ceremony. Our student guides are around to show us the way. So we'll see you in a few minutes. Thank you all very much.